The options were 1. Indenture yourself for a decade or two. 2. Exile yourself forever. 3. Join the Adventurers Guild. Being young, foolish, klutzy, and fearful, option 3 seemed the least worst. Now, Libras found himself on a mapping expedition below the bamboo belt on what might as well be a landmark mountain, and he was saddled with leading 3 others, another Berlain, a Clockswoman, and a Kevprey, and making sure their map was accurate and that nobody died and that everybody kept their wits around them and didn't forget their training. And oh, damn it, he screwed a skittish, vengeful badger on this one, 'cause he had been saddled with leading 4 others, except that the Chud Galar had just wandered off after taking offense at something or other which Libras probably, okay, fine, definitely, shouldn't have said. And the Chud Galar was the one with the map-making tools and skills, so everybody else wanted to head back, give up. Their training was inadequate, the task impossible, and everybody pretty much wanted to kill everyone else. Except that Libras really thought if he could just get another couple days out here, he might wear down Li Shen's resistance and get all up in her leggings. And he didn't really want to go back and admit failure, and aside from up, he really wasn't sure which way was the way back. So he cajoled them and encouraged them and convinced them to stick to the mission, in a sense. They'd not go any farther down the mountain. They'd trace an arc of the circumference of the mountain and try really hard to remember what they saw, and then they'd report that when they got back, and somebody could turn that into a map of sorts. The Clockswoman instructed them all in how to remember stuff by turning it into an epic story in their minds, each of them working on a story, and then each evening they'd sit and tell their stories and weave them together into a single awesome narrative that would reveal all. And if the Kevprey hadn't been so sick, that might have worked. The Kevprey just sort of blindly lumbered along behind them with snot running out of its nasal cavities and the occasional bout of heaving vomit and or explosive diarrhea, which was about as distasteful as one might imagine. But it kept up. Sometimes Libras wondered if the Kevprey was male or female. Sometimes Libras wondered if the Kevprey had a name. Mostly Libras lusted after Li Shen. So it was a real hoof to the nads when Libras woke this morning, wandered off for a piss, came back to the campsite, and damn near dripped over Li Shen and Gutlib's daughter, still asleep together in post-coital snarl. That tore it. He made plenty of noise getting breakfast ready and announced loudly that the mission was over and they'd all be heading upslope, gate-wise and otherwise out of here immediately, after breakfast. The Kevprey seemed ever so slightly pleased at the news, then agitated, kept trying to say something, but Libras was 100% committed to the most aggressively applied passive-aggressive tunnel vision he could work up. The Kevprey picked up a weapon before the camp was fully packed away. Libras refused to even comment, strobing his disgust at the giant hairy thing's lack of professionalism. Screaming brought Libras back to the moment. Gutlib's daughter was screaming something in her guttural excuse for a language, pounding at this big sack of sickly green jellyfish Li Shen was hiding under. It was without a doubt the strangest fetish gear Libras had ever seen or heard of. Another vast jellyfish thing leaped soundlessly from the woods and knocked Gutlib's daughter to the ground. And Libras started to get the idea that maybe this wasn't about sex or rejection or rejected sex, but maybe, just maybe, a life and death situation. So Libras started to move, trying to remember where he'd left his weapon, which was a spear, and it was very long, so it ought to be easy to find, except it was a long piece of wood, and they were surrounded by woods, and there were things in the woods, and they were surely looking at him and just waiting for him to look away so they could leap out at him and on him like they leaped out on Gutlib's daughter and, he presumed, Li Shen, and if he didn't focus, then he'd never find that spear, but what would that matter if he reached for it and was crushed by one of those sickly green things that was doing something to Gutlib's daughter that must hurt a lot because she was just gushing blood into the thing, and because the thing was mostly transparent, Libras could see the jets of blood just filling the thing and channeled around, and then there was the thing starting to slide off of Li Shen, and it was blurting out, just blurting out limbs to skitter at Libras, and there were eyes blurting out of the front and staring at him, and a mouth or a beak or a funnel or a crushing whole thing blurted out too, and it was huge, and where was that damn spear? The Kivprey came out of somewhere and brought down a club the size of a 10-year-old child on top of the blurted thing and ruptured the top of it, and the thing made no sound at all, but Libras sort of squeaked with joy and found his spear and lunged at the weapon and got it in his hand, and he turned and saw the Kivprey standing right in the thing and bringing his weapon down into the blood-red, sickly green mass of the stuff again and again, but the thing on Gutlib's daughter launched itself at the Kevprey and sandwiched it there in red and green and blurted out these long spiky things that plunged into the Kevprey, and inside his companion's body blurted out barbs, and when the spikes pulled out, they came out with great big chunks of Kevprey. Libras ran in there, and he stabbed, but the thing didn't give a damn about being stabbed, and it just silently sucked in the Kevprey's innards and blew up like a tick, and maybe that's all that kept it from killing Libras, too. He ran, and he ran all the way back to safety, reported on all that had happened, just blurted it all out, even the ugly stuff. Later, he could try to make excuses, not that it would matter. He was going to find someone who could take him as a slave forever and ever, so long as it was somewhere far, far from here. He told himself that. Maybe he even believed it. After the shaking stopped.